And if
The
you
motivation was there.
and if you are going on an adventure that's fake, that's in a computer, in a phone, it doesn't do anything for you in the real world.
Yeah,
You are a big deal online. Yeah, that's awesome. You're a big deal online. What does it do? What monetary gain have you gained? What social
yeah,
gain have you gained?
yeah,
What what religious gain have you gained? You haven't gained anything. You've just achieved something on a game that most people don't know about and most people don't care about, except for your buddies online, right? Hello and welcome to the Brothers Random Show. My name is Travis,
and I'm Michael.
and we are two ordinary brothers discussing extraordinary ideas and some random shit. So the topics on this show range from theology, masculinity, stories, movies, philosophy, books, pop culture, and many other subjects. We often talk about the people we admire and the wisdom they share. People such as Dr. Jordan B. Peterson, who we believe is the sage of our time. Michael, why are we here?
Today we are talking about an interview with Jonathan Haidt in on Joe Rogan.
That's why you wrote this, The Anxious Generation. And it could not be more true how the great rewiring of childhood is causing an epidemic of mental illness. I don't think anybody can dispute that.
Yeah, when I was on last time, there was a dispute. There were some psychologists who said, "Oh, this is just a moral panic." They said this about video games and comic books, and no, this is not a real thing. They said. Now they don't.
Yeah, I think it was pretty obvious. I think it was only their preconceived notions that were keeping them from admitting it before, or at least looking at it before, or maybe they don't have children.
So Joe Rogan has had Jonathan Haidt on a few different times. They talk a little bit about their conversation in 2019. And it's interesting because they had a conversation that was pre-COVID, and now they're able to kind of revisit their conversation post-COVID.
Yeah.
And it's very interesting. And I mean, we've been kind of watching Jonathan Haidt's work for a while. I haven't read his book, but you've read his book.
Yeah, the book, first of all, I should apologize to our audience. I am fighting a head cold, so I sound a little different. And I want to shave off my face. Um, so Jonathan Haidt wrote a book, and it's called The Coddling of the American Mind, and it's very good. It's about after pretty much after the like button was created on social media, specifically Facebook, it caused a decline of mental health among the youth. Now, of course, it's been over 10 years since this happened, but we're kind of seeing the effects of it now. And this is really what Jonathan Haidt, and we keep pronouncing his name wrong.
What the fuck? What? Bro, what are you talking about, man?
Jonathan Haidt, this is really what he talks about with Joe Rogan, because they basically had a long conversation before COVID and a long conversation after COVID. And now they're like, in hindsight, going, COVID was a big mistake, especially among the youth today, who all are online, but this made them more online.
Yeah. He talks about how in 2019, he was saying, we need to get kids off their screens and like going and playing outside. Well, then COVID happens. Yeah. COVID happens, and literally people are locked indoors. And he talks about how the playgrounds were shut down. And that's even here in Utah, we had the playgrounds had caution tape wrapped around them. Like, you were not supposed to be we ended up going on like hikes, like where they couldn't shut everything down, where even some places we'd go to try and hike.
Yeah.
And there'd be people there like, yeah, sorry, this area is all closed down. I'm like, are you effing kidding me? No. So this was
bad. I mean, everybody who's got an intelligent brain cell, intelligent brain cells to rub together, knows that this was the dumbest thing we could have done as a society. And we are suffering the effects of it. And Joe Rogan and Jonathan Haidt get into it about this. He and Haidt has been on this tear for a long time. He's been talking about this for he's got a new book called The Anxious Generation. And I guess the subheading is how the great rewiring of childhood is causing an epidemic of mental illness. So Haidt is actually a social psychologist, and so he's got a lot of knowledge. He teaches at the New York University, so he's got a lot of knowledge on this, and specifically how social media has kind of ruined our children. So he has like 4
so he has 4 norms
antidotes to this.
He's very he's had a history of being Democrat, like left, but he's kind of turned into a libertarian a little bit. He said, as he says, he has libertarian sympathies. So he doesn't necessarily think that we should have necessarily a top-down Congress should pass laws. He has a few things. He has a few things where he thinks that Congress should maybe get involved. And we can kind of get into some of those. But he has 4 norms that he's trying to get mostly parents. He wants parents to adopt these things. And the 4 norms are no smartphone before high school. And this, I think we will start to see kind of the rise of, I want to say flip phone, but I think we should probably see a kind of switching. Now it's weird because I was trying to get a flip phone for my kids a little bit ago, and the Verizon store I went into didn't even have
any flip phones. Yeah,
they didn't have nothing for me. So
you're gonna have to start buying them online and then having them connected or whatever.
But I think this is gonna start to become. I hope, and I think he's hoping too, that we will start to see like a resurgence of like flip phones for kids, where it's texting, calling. That's it. Right. And I agree with that wholeheartedly. I think that would be very beneficial. And he mentions how, in early 2000s, when that's all we had, kids were doing fairly well. Right.
Yeah. Because they were still going outside. They were still,
talking with each other. Texting was kind of, you text, you would talk, but you were also getting together in person more than just, it was a vehicle of being able to get together in person. Yeah. Right. So I remember texting. I do remember having conversations, but I also remember it was a lot of it was just like, hey, you want to hang out at this place? Yep. I'm in, let's go. Right. Like, and then you meet up at this place, the mall or whatever. Right. So,
those things are going away. Like malls are closing, hangout places for kids are closing, especially during COVID. They like literally closed playgrounds. It's like we couldn't have done a worse thing to the youth of this country. So,
yeah. So the no smartphones before high school, no social media before 16. I actually think it should probably be maybe like 18 or something. I don't know. 16. That's still so young.
It's still pretty young to have my kids only have access to YouTube, and that's pretty much it. And that's still considered a social media platform. I wish they watched less shorts though, because a few years back, Chris Williamson talked about a study that was done that maybe shorts were causing gray matter in the brain, especially if you're like doom scrolling all the time.
clips. So like
Yeah.
clips.
Yeah.
I loved this conversation that they had where they were talking about, Haidt was talking about stories versus basically clips.
Yeah.
Well,
so TikTok.
The TikTok. He's talking about TikTok specifically.
Specifically,
yeah. TikTok. Now, TikTok is what brought it on. So YouTube didn't have shorts until TikTok came around.
Yeah.
Like once TikTok came around and they realized, I don't even know the numbers. Maybe we should look up the numbers. TikTok, people spend more hours on TikTok than Netflix. I want to say like all of them, Netflix, Amazon, all of them combined. It's abysmal how much time people spend on TikTok. Now they figured it out, the algorithms, they feed people what they want to see, blah, blah, blah. They really kind of figured all that shit out. But he's talking about how stories have been part of our
culture for a millennia.
Humankind has been telling each other stories. So like, I mean, myths, we're talking the whole gambit, myths, scripture, legends, right? Like all has been
the Bible
stories.
is a story.
Right.
We talked about Beowulf recently. Yep. That's a story.
We would sit in shamans would tell us stories around a campfire, right?
Yeah.
Like
yeah.
This was part of us growing as humans. And now people are moving away from stories and actually
to just moments, to just
snippets of stuff, right? Like things, I'm going to be honest, like I don't have TikTok, but some of my friends will send me like TikTok videos and stuff. And there's some fucking funny shit, right? There's some really
hilarious stuff,
funny, hilarious stuff, right? But when it's
all you consume, you don't have it feels like you're, I don't know what's the best way to say it, but it feels like you can't focus on anything.
Yeah.
So you're just sitting there scrolling, and then you see something, you stay on it for a little bit, and then you go on to the next thing, and it's almost like your brain, it's almost
soul crushing. It's almost like a soul depriving.
Well, and your brain like forgets it right away.
Yeah.
Like it's weird.
It just moves on to the next.
It just moves on to the next. And like there might be something that holds out a little bit, and you have to share it with somebody else. Like you go, oh, this is so funny, share it with somebody else. And then but then it like something that you may have lingered on for a little bit longer, like is memory hold. You don't like, I'll see videos that I've seen before and have forgotten that I've seen before. Like, and this is mostly on YouTube.
Yeah.
I'll be like, oh, I've seen this one before.
Yeah.
But I'll have forgotten that I had seen it until I'm like a third of the way into the video.
Yeah.
Right. So it's weird how your memory just kind of like, it's gone.
Well, weren't you saying that Chris Williamson was talking about it creating more gray matter in the brain?
Yeah, it's I don't know about you, but are you able to remember numbers? Like phone numbers.
Like phone numbers?
Like we used to.
Not
like
generally. No. Well, but like I can remember my best friend's phone numbers growing up.
Yeah, from growing up.
From growing up.
You cannot remember new numbers.
Well, that's probably just because we're not typing them ever. So we click on a head, and then.
But isn't that gray matter? Isn't that the gray matter could just coming in to
I guess that's probably a huge part of it. Yeah.
And so, I don't remember any numbers. I have to write down and I'm in a job that requires you to know some numbers. You'll get numbers flinged at you, and you in that moment you got either you write them down or you don't remember.
Right.
Because they're gone.
Yeah.
And I believe that that's because of this. It's because of the short stuff. It's because, you know, and I see it in my kids. My oldest kid didn't get a phone until she was older. My middle kid recently got a phone, and she's probably was too young for it.
Mm-hmm.
And my wife and I have decided the third kid is not getting a smartphone until she's a lot older. Because I'm okay with her continually to watch shows, even if they're short shows. They're, you know, like Bluey. Bluey's a perfect example of a perfect child show.
Yeah.
There's a lesson, the kids watch it, they're entertained. I watch it, I'm entertained. So that's the perfect kid show. The constant shorts and TikTok stuff is just I don't think it's good.
Yeah.
At all.
Yeah.
And Jonathan Haidt doesn't either, according to this interview.
Yeah.
So
yeah. So yes, no social media before 16. So that's number 2. 3 is phone-free schools.
So this has recently been happening where they basically have a place for you to put your phone,
lock up your phone
when you
at the beginning of school. You know, everybody survived a long time without phones. Lock it up and go to school.
Excuse me.
You'll talk to each other in between classes rather than being on your phone.
So I remember, I don't know where I learned this. It must have been a teacher who told me, somebody I knew. But he would embarrass the kids because they would be looking down like this with their phone underneath the desk. And he always thought it looked like they were looking at their crotch. Right. And so he's like, you guys need to stop this. Get your phones over here, because it looks to me when I'm standing up here like you were looking at your crotch. And I'll tell you one thing, those are not as impressive as you think they are.
Hilarious.
So I just thought that it was funny. It depends on the teacher in my kids' school, I think, because I think most teachers don't allow them in there, but that you still hear about kids messing with their phones in class. So it's like, I don't know how enforced it is.
In their conversation, Haidt and Rogan are talking, and Haidt kind of quotes Rogan from a different interview, where he basically says, I think you said this, correct me if I'm wrong, in this other interview, but didn't you say that my whole life is fucking on my phone or something to that effect? And he's right. Like we're inundated so much from this, and we remember a time when we had no phone. So there was we're struggling with it, and we were at a time where we never had it, right? So the fact that kids can grow up with it
and will never remember a time where they didn't have it.
So that, like, that's where
they'll be our age and they will have not remembered a time where they didn't have it.
Yeah. It's a little kind of freaky, and it's kind of like, all right, yeah. So some of these norms should probably be picked up, because I wanted to push back a little bit on the phone-free schools. Now, the reason being is that I'm not like justifying it or anything, but there's so much learning. Elon Musk once said that we're basically cyborgs now with our phone, with our phone. And it's pretty true. Like this is an extension of me.
Yeah.
Like it gets to know me. It kind of gets to know what
your habits are.
I've been, my habits and things, right? Like we were just barely talking a minute ago. I journal on it, and my journals kind of learned a little bit
like
about
when the best time for you to journal.
I like to journal and things like that. So shoot me reminders. It's just, there's so much now. There's good. There's a whole bunch of good that like I use my calendar like it's like there's no tomorrow. Like,
well, I imagine
some of these things all the time.
I imagine we're a lot right now. We're a lot like when the printing press was originally put into mass production. You know, I forget what century it was, but it's, you know, we're at least 500 years away from when the printing press started. I think. Anyway, the whole point is that I imagine that we're in when the printing press first started and it became widely accessible to random people. They would print out. People started printing out these pamphlets that were just shit. It was lies. It was so at some point
it wasn't anything. It was supposed to be like news, but they were all basically made up lies. Yeah,
they were made up lies, and this happened forever like this. So I imagine we're kind of in that now with technology. So the printing press, this happens, and people immediately read it and go, "Oh, this must be true," right?
Mm-hmm.
And we're the same way. If it's on the news, oh, this must be true, right? No. There are people out there who do not tell the truth, and we should be, you know, wise enough to decipher between it. And the problem is that the truth has become so, it's become so convoluted that nobody knows what's true and what's not. And so I think we're kind of in the weeds in this. And I don't know what the printing press, eventually they got to a point, I think, where there was like an ethics kind of committee for news. Now those ethics committees have gone because the news is it feels like it has no more ethics. But what was the solution was basically a healthy dose of skepticism, I would say, with a lot of people. And then, I mean, I think that's where most people are now, is that they're all skeptics. They're all like, I don't know, you know, you know, there's stuff out there that, you know, even in their conversation with Joe and Haidt, they even get into an argument about something Donald Trump said in this interview. And it was fascinating because both of them had legitimate concerns, but neither one, because one is more libertarian and one's a Democrat, they sit there and they kind of argue back and forth what actually Donald Trump did say, and they couldn't agree on it because we're a society now of skeptics, you know, which has been born of lies in our mass media. So I guess my point is that this happened with the printing press. It might take us another 100 years to figure out how to navigate social media.
Yeah. And to be honest, with some of these, I don't know that it very much fixes the problem, because like I didn't have social media on my phone till I was probably mid-20s. So I was probably 25 before I had social media on my phone, right? Prior to that, it was social media on a computer that you had to go, you know, somewhere and sit down with, kind of thing. Right now, it was still social media, but my worry for this is it might be just a drop in the bucket that doesn't really change much, because, you know, no smartphone before high school, no social media before 16. I mean, 16, like I think the studies are that your prefrontal cortex isn't even really for humans.
25. You're like
25
before
like,
that's fully
not
developed,
even barely developed. I mean, it's like even if you wait till 18, I mean, are we really sure we want this? Is what he's like, kids need to be able to be kids.
Yeah.
And we need to facilitate that. And if we don't facilitate that, there's going to be problems down the road. Now that I agree with 100%, but is it enough to keep them off of it till 16 or even 18? Like 18 is I mean,
yeah,
that's why you can't drink alcohol till you're 21. And I am a small business or a small government advocate. And so how do we change this? And are we able to change this without big government getting involved? And even Haidt, who's very left leaning, is kind of just like, I just don't know how I feel about
government getting involved with it. Yeah.
Getting involved with this. Right.
Well, because if you're going to take away these freedoms to get involved, so they talk about TikTok getting banned in certain states, and that TikTok makes sense, I guess, because it's controlled by the Chinese Communist Party, but I don't know if it you run a fine line of having a government take over and say you can't do this.
Yeah, and he wanted to separate. He wanted to make sure that we separate the national security of TikTok versus the issue of mental health of TikTok.
Yeah.
Very different. He's like, let's separate this, right? Because very different things. The national security part, like he admitted he didn't know as much about, but it's basically this issue of we have a foreign country that may or may not be hostile to us owning a company. And this is how the CCP works. But basically every company in China has to do whatever the CCP says.
Yeah.
The Chinese Communist Party. So it's a company that's based out of China. And if the CCP wanted to, they could probably get whatever they wanted from them. So data, whatever. And it's all been kind of back and forth. Oh, well, we don't really have the data, blah, blah, blah. It's over here, blah, blah, yeah, whatever, because we don't really know. And Congress is looking at basically trying to force them to sell to an American company.
What it comes down to is the individual with everything. So the individual has to go, okay, this is bad for me and I spent too much time doing it. I'm done. Or I'm going to limit it. Or I'm a parent and I'm going to make my children limit their social media. And it comes like, that's what Jonathan Haidt is trying to say, as parents, this is what we need to do in order for the addiction that these cause to lower. Now they've been talking about phone addiction for 10 years. I remember a story from a kid in Japan or a boot camp in Japan that would send their social or phone addicted children in order for them to get off the phone to not have the addiction.
A boot camp. Huh.
A boot camp.
Maybe we'll see a rise in that.
Maybe we will.
Anti-phone boot camps.
Yeah, that's what they were. They were like military based, like.
Wow.
And the kids, and I remember seeing a story about that. Yeah, it was about 10 years ago. It was a long time ago. So this would have been around about the same time that social media just took off. You know?
Interesting. So the fourth thing that Jonathan Haidt suggests is for the four new norms. The fourth one is more independence, free play, and responsibility in the real world.
He talks about this in The Coddling of the American Mind. Okay, so Amy Chua is the author of the book Battle Hymn of the Tiger Mother, and she got a bunch of her book came out in like 2011 or something like that, and she got a bunch of crap because what she did is she was trying to raise self-sufficient, highly intelligent, highly motivated children. And there's a little bit of people were saying that she was abusive, right? So he tells this story. It's from her book, I believe, about her or somebody sending their child through New York, through the New York subway system at, I think it was 7 or 8. And that's young. I got an 8-year-old, and that's really young for somebody. But this kid did it and didn't get swiped. Now, New York's changed since 2011, but this is what she was saying we had to do with our children to create independence in them. And maybe 8 is too young, maybe like 13 or 14 is better. I don't know. But I guess the argument is the kids who are going to in high school now and the kids that are going into college are extremely fragile, and that's what Haidt is, or Jonathan Haidt is talking about, is the fragility of the children that are being raised in our society right now.
Yeah, in the 80s, we and you watch it on film with Stranger Things.
Yeah.
And you know that the makers of Stranger Things are tapping into a bit of nostalgia for people who grew up that way.
Yeah.
Literally where it was just like, okay, sweetie, be home for supper.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah.
And it's just, get on your bike, and summers were just filled with get on your bike and go find shit to do.
Yeah.
And then be home by dinner time.
And usually you came back with like a broken arm or some busted, like something was crazy.
I don't know.
We had so like living so if you don't know, Michael and I grew up on a ranch where we would go out for the summer in just anywhere. And this was acres and acres and sometimes we were trespassing on other people's places and stuff like that. And all we had to do is listen for the car horn or our mom calling us back. Yeah, the car horn.
Remember the car horn?
Mom used to beep the car horn, and we'd be like, was that mom? Oh, no. Okay. Let's go back to whatever mischief
catching lizards. Let's go back to catching
lizards or and so, but kids don't do this anymore. In fact, I don't think a lot of the time, unless they're in a gym, they're not breaking a sweat.
Yeah. Haidt's point is that, and the numbers might have changed since COVID. So I don't know if the numbers still stand, but one of his points was that crime is down. Like child abductions are down lower than they've ever been. But people are more afraid because the hyperbole around someone gets kidnapped is blown up way more than it used to be. Right. So,
well, it goes back to mass media, right? Mass media is going to shoot this across. This child's been missing for 14 weeks or whatever. And we're watching it as parents, and we're like, I don't want that to ever happen. And so we've put this grip around our kids.
It's been a bit of, and my wife and I, we talked about this, and I've talked about how we need to try to allow our kids to maybe go down to the park by themselves, things like that. She won't have any of it. She's nope. This, she reads all the, what is it? The cold cases and the forensic files and all those things
of a kid that's been disappeared for, so that can create a fear that maybe you don't.
Helicopter parenting. And so you just don't want to let them get out of your sight.
Well, and there's a lot of sympathy for that, because you don't want your child to come back to you when they're adults and go, you didn't protect me. I was victimized by somebody and you didn't protect me. That's like my worst. That's my worst nightmare is my kid coming to me as an adult and going, this person that, so, and what it does is it makes for us to be helicopter parents. And
yeah, I mean, you watch Taken and you're just like, I would never let my daughter at 16 go to another country ever, ever, ever. And, and I've had conversations with people that did that, who were, young adult, like maybe more like 17, 18 or something like that, but were going and traveling to some of these countries. And it's a tough battle. It's a tough battle. And
there's got to be a fine line. There's got to be like this line where, okay, we need to create resilience in our children, but we also need to protect them enough that they're not going to be victimized by evil people. Now, Jonathan Haidt says that says that the likelihood, the chances of your child being abducted or taken or whatever are so slim that it shouldn't outweigh their ability to go out
free range.
And be free range. Yeah. And that's, I mean, really, you don't want to be that 1% though.
Yeah. So tough. And my wife has brought up, she's just like, well, what if it's gone down because of helicopter parenting, not just because crime has gone down. Now, Haidt's point, and this is a big point that he makes, and I think he is really onto something, is that the predators aren't out there on the streets, they're online.
Oh yeah. And that's where all of our kids have gone.
And that's where all of our kids have gone. So
the predators are mostly online. Yeah.
And people think that it's not bad because they're not online.
Outside. Yeah.
They're not outside.
They're not,
right.
Yeah.
They're in the safety of their bedroom. But nowadays, I bet if you found the abductions, it'd probably be way more. They found them online. They
stalked them online.
Stalked them, rused them up or whatever. Got them to meet them somewhere, and then ran away with them or stole them or whatever the case.
Yeah.
Right. So I don't know the stats on those kinds of things, but it's fair point, Jonathan. Fair point.
Yeah.
They've gone online. And the problems are coming from online. Yeah.
List those off again real quick, Michael, those
okay.
4. So.
Yep. So, no smartphones before high school. 1, 2, no social media before 16. 3, phone-free schools. And 4, more independent, free play and responsibility in the real world. That one is a little harder to measure, like more independent, like it's a little harder to measure, but I will say this is a cultural weird thing, but kids not getting their driver's licenses until they're like 18.
Yeah.
And I don't know exactly what's changed, but man, I couldn't.
Some of what's changed is parenting. Parenting has changed. I couldn't wait to get away from our father. Mm-hmm. So in order to do that, you have to get a license. You have to be able to drive. That gives you a sense of independence. I could not wait to get my license. On the other hand, my children, I have a good relationship with my children. It's never perfect, but it's good. And I think, and all the 18, 19, or all the 16-year-olds I've known in my life have not got their license at 16.
Yeah. It's been way later,
it's been way later. Yeah.
Maybe it's, maybe we're not pushing them enough to go get a job once they turn 16. Cause
there's
it was
that.
a little different for us. We worked on the ranch, but I knew a lot of people like I mean, right away, if they could get a job at younger than 16, they would. And some places will, let you, come in and sweep floors and stuff at a younger age.
Well, so as long as you're not doing like a 40-hour week,
they can allow for that. But some people I grew up with, that 16 hit, they were out there trying to get a job, and getting their license right away. Like, it's just a different, and maybe social media did this. Maybe
it's
maybe you're right. Maybe it's the parenting. I don't know.
It's a weird infantilization of an entire generation, I think. And that's what the coddling of the American mind is about. Is about coddling these kids to the point where they can't function in regular society. Jonathan Haidt tells, I believe in that book, a story of a woman who had trouble with her boss, and her mother got a hold of the boss.
Yeah.
And this was a woman who was in her 20s. She had started working and she was stressed out about her job, and the mother gets a hold of the boss to, like a teacher would, like you would with a teacher, like you'd get a hold of, and that's just not acceptable. That,
Yeah. But so we had a sister that was in the college, in college faculty, and she told me that it was a slow switch, but it was like kids in college, now the professors were getting calls from their parents, almost just like in high school.
Yeah.
Where they were calling the teacher and talking to them about their grades and things like that. And in college, and that's just, we're just talking about different things. Let me read this from an article, and it's a quote from Haidt. He says, "I call smartphones experience blockers, because once you give the phone to a child, it's going to take up every moment that is not nailed down to something else."
Yeah.
I like spot on. And this is, and this I think is maybe the crux of the problem, is just that our kids aren't having like dull time, like time to figure out what they want to think about or what they want to play with, kind of thing. And they just have it at the tip, their, the world's information at their fingertips, or the world's entertainment or laughing at their fingertips.
So
that means,
this reminds me of two. So I know of two people, both men. One's in his 30s, one's in his 50s. They don't have a home. They don't have a wife or a girlfriend. They don't have children. And all of their extra time is spent online. And they brag about their accomplishments online, which aren't accomplishments. If you're like, I don't know what games they play, but it's like World of Warcraft or something like that. And they're looking at them as they're the dopamine accomplishments that they've had. And they're proud of them, but they have no real world effect at all. They haven't achieved money. There's no money in it. In fact, it costs money. They haven't furthered their religious or mental health, because they say that it decreases with gameplay. They haven't met a girl. Any of the factors of success do not apply to that. Factors of success: a family, house, income. Factors of success.
And we've had conversations about the kind of the hijacking of men's, and this is more on the men's side. So social media, I think, hits women a little differently, and the numbers show that it's actually affected it's affected women's mental health worse
probably.
And
but there has Height actually gives some numbers in this interview, and it's women have gone up a lot. Females or girls have gone up a lot in their mental health issues, and men have actually spiked as well.
They've both gone up, but it's been more exponential for women. It's just it's just been that way.
The numbers,
but for men, at least, it's when you're talking about these
online video games
or whatever, they on the video games will give men a
sense of accomplishment,
a sense of accomplishment, a sense of even brother, like warriorship, brotherly, warriorship or something. Because camaraderie. You get online. It's almost like it's hitting all the things in our heads that would have been ancient to us. We gather with a band of brothers to go hunt the mammoth. Right. And or go fight the other tribe. So but these guys online are doing it, and
they're ancient needs that are being fed in a non-reality, non-achieve sense. It doesn't, in the real world, it doesn't achieve anything. It doesn't do anything.
And then there's porn for the
other pleasure.
For the need to basically gain access to sex. Now, so all the things that would have driven, our nations being built up in this, I mean, a lot of people get upset when I say stuff like this because it makes it the women's fault or whatever. But like, men used to have, like, that's why men would get on a ship and, like, to maybe die on a ship. They go out and find their fortune so that they could come back and have a family.
Yeah.
That was the risk.
The motivating factor.
That was the risk. That was the reward, right?
Yeah.
The motivation was there.
And if you are going on an adventure that's fake, that's in a computer, in a phone, it doesn't do anything for you in the real world. You are a big deal online. Yeah, that's awesome. You're a big deal online. What does it do? What monetary gain have you gained? What social gain have you gained? What religious gain have you gained? You haven't gained anything. You've just achieved something on a game that most people don't know about and most people don't care about. Except for your buddies online, right?
Yeah. Anyway, social media, and they go into this a little bit, but it affects girls differently, and it's probably more of a social thing.
Because and they seem to be affected by because women are more sociable than men. They tend to, it seems to affect them more negatively when social media turns negative. Because they always get their dopamine hit also from social media, because they post a picture of themselves and everybody's like, oh, you're so beautiful, blah 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 blah. But then you get somebody who's like, oh, her nose is a little too big. Oh, then the dopamine goes up, and then it's like, so it's a
and it might be a keeping up with the Joneses thing too. Like maybe. everybody's posting their highlight reel. And you can't compare yourself, especially in the low moments. You can't compare yourself to everybody else's highlight reel. That's not life. That's not their life. That's their highlight reel. It's
because
it's fake.
You don't see the negatives because they don't show them,
or what the shit they had to go through to get there. Whatever it is, it's an unfulfilled story. It's an incomplete story, and you can't compare yourself to those. But it's designed to be just that.
Yeah.
For you to compare yourself to somebody else.
Well, that's human nature, right? So maybe we should end on this. Jordan Peterson, one of the 12 rules for life, I believe, is don't compare yourself to someone else. Compare yourself to who you were yesterday.
Yeah. Don't compare yourself to who somebody else is now. Compare yourself to to who you were yesterday, right? Because he says now, because you're looking at them now.
You're looking at them now.
Yeah.
So it's basically, you should only be improving you, because you can't do what they did, right?
Mm-hmm.
There was this, I don't remember who it was, but there was a famous director who said, anytime somebody becomes a filmmaker, a successful filmmaker, the way they did it, the door closes. So somebody's got to do it differently the next time around. Thank you for that, brother. And now that we've just dumped on social media, we will ask people to check us out on social media. The irony, you can cut through it. So we're on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Just look for The Sword in the Skull. If you are listening to this and not watching it, please go to YouTube and share, like, and subscribe. There are our begs. Thanks for that, brother. Keep reading, keep listening, keep watching, learn more. We'll see you.
See ya.